It is such an honor and a privilege to welcome back Gloria Masters to the Warriors. Today, everybody, you are going to be hearing about this book, Keeping Kids Safe. We are going to review, Gloria and I are going to be having a series of interviews, discussions, chit chats, whatever you want to call it, just chapter by chapter. I really want to go through this. This is a roadmap for parents, teachers, and others. Now, let's talk a little bit about Gloria Masters. Gloria is a survivor, many years of child sexual abuse and trafficking. Gloria supremely understands what is needed to keep kids safe. This is a very easy to follow. It's a guide. It's invaluable. And this is the roadmap. I want everybody, when we're done, not right now, go to Amazon, go to gloriamasters.com. Please order the book. It is easy to read. It is easy to digest. And I just told Gloria, I'm going to be buying it for everybody. I started already as a gift, because this is the best gift for everybody. And this is Gloria's third book. But Gloria, let me get you in here. Welcome to the Warriors.
Thank you, Lynn. Great to see you.
Well, thank you, because I'm in New York City and you're in the middle of where? New Zealand somewhere? Where are you?
You're North Island, New Zealand, Auckland. Yes.
And Gloria, someday I will get the time difference correct. I promise. Because, I'm always rushing when I do something. So I'll put my time with your time, the wrong time. I think I got it down this time, but I'm starting with this chapter right in the beginning. I put a heart here. That's my little bookmark under definitions, because Gloria, what you know as an expert, what I know, the public needs to understand and know. So let's start at the beginning with definitions. And I like this one, body safety rules. Let's start there. How would you describe that?
Well, I think it's interesting. We have safety rules for crossing the street. We have safety rules for being in a vehicle, but we don't usually tend to give our children or grandchildren body safety rules or rules around boundaries for them and their bodies. So the focus really is on the body belongs to them. Number one. It is their body, it belongs to them. So it includes what body parts are private, the correct names for them, please, parents, the correct names, and that no one should touch those private parts apart from the child themselves. That also includes that if anybody does, they go straight to or signal a safe adult or parent immediately. But I do go into lots of detail in part 7 of the book, which is on tools for children.
I see that. We are going to get to that. But safe body rules, body safety rules, or safe body rules. You know what I want to say? This was the first holiday, Gloria. I actually saw a few people posting about, don't force your child to sit on Santa Claus's lap if they don't. And I thought, okay, this is kind of a good first step. You don't have to hug Uncle so-and-so if you feel uncomfortable. So at least this is seeping out and people are starting a little bit to understand. So this is a good start. Now, child sexual abuse, you call it in your book CSA.
Yep.
Explain what that is.
Well, it's a form of child abuse in which an adult or older child as an adolescent uses a child for sexual stimulation. And we know that across the globe, Lynn, age of consent varies, but for instance, generally in our country, children are defined as being under the age of 18. And we define them as children because they're unable cognitively to give consent due to their age and lack of awareness. So child sexual abuse is any form of child abuse in which an older child, adolescent, or adult uses a child for sexual stimulation. Now, that might be making them pose for them. They may not even touch the child. They may want the child to pose erotically for them. They may start using child sexual abuse material, C-scams, wordage, imagery. They may show a child things like that. These all constitute forms of child sexual abuse. So if we just keep the main heading as any type of abuse in which a child is used for sexual stimulation.
Okay, that's very clear. I wanted to get into the next CSAM, CSAM, child sexual abuse material. People are still calling it in the media, Gloria. They'll say kiddie porn, child pornography, children cannot consent. Describe this to us. Tell us about this. I talk about it every single day. People still don't have an understanding of what this is.
So it's child sexual abuse materials. So, for instance, that might be in a video format. It might be in imaging in terms of digital images or photos. So I think what it is, these tend to be of children or teenagers being sexually abused by adults or others. So, we replace the term, come on, people, it's 2024. We replace the term kiddie porn, which makes me feel sick saying it, and child pornography simply because of this. Those terms minimize. See how it becomes a little more, or less in our faces.
Yes.
It minimizes and glamorizes child sexual abuse. Done. It's gone. Child sexual abuse, CSAMs, yeah. Gone.
CSAM, child sexual abuse material. Very important as we enter into AI, artificial intelligence, this artificial general intelligence. We're going to get into that a little bit later on. That is my concern with all of this, that these images, these photos are uploaded. Nothing goes away. Nothing gets deleted, because I've been hearing that argument every day. Once you put a photo out there, a video out there, it is there forever, because somebody in a millisecond can capture that photo, can take that tweet or wherever you're putting it online and upload it to porn sites, their own sites. So we have to be very aware. We have to constantly say, none of this goes away. Once you post something, it is there forever. So we got to keep an eye on this CSAM. It's very concerning going into this AI.
It is very concerning. And just a little quick cautionary note, and Lynn, you do it many times over. I'm really thankful for that. Parents, stop posting images of your child.
Gloria, they won't. I don't know. Even ones I talk to and say they're into child safety, or others who have interviewed me or I've interviewed them, I turn around, Gloria, and I see their children online. I don't understand it.
No, it really concerns me. You've got a beautiful 5-year-old in our country that starts school, and there's images of this child everywhere. Fine if you want to share it with a select group of friends, but all you're doing is feeding this monster, which, as we know, is growing.
And that is why we say, the internet, it's like opening the front door and letting the world in. And even, Gloria, when we because I teach a lot, just have friends, your actual friends on Facebook, friends with the children and gaming. But to be honest, in the world we're living in, we don't even know what one of them might do with the photos. So we have to actually, because of the escalation and the crisis here with all of this exploitation, really add that to the mix. We don't really know. But Gloria, I was astounded over the weekend. Somebody in the media I work with, her 5-year-old all over. And I'm like, and she preaches, don't put photos of children. So I'm like, okay, she's not understanding. We'll swing back on that one. Now, let's talk about disclosure, because you said something last time we spoke. Here it is. Notice and trust children's behavior over their words. That is where the truth lies. That's a direct quote from you. What about disclosure?
Well, it's really simple. It's when a child shares the truth of the sexual abuse they've experienced. That's it.
That's it. Why do you think
disclosure is?
This is kind of a loaded question? We know it's dark. We know it's ugly. We know your background. Why would people doubt a child?
Okay, so actually it's interesting you asked me that, and I'm very glad you have. So let me give this to you, because I think it's really, really important. The reason that children are considered in this manner, and that they are not actually believed in the way that we would like them to be, is because what they don't actually get to see, Lynn, who they don't see other children being believed. So number one, they won't tell because they have yet to experience a child they've seen being believed. Number two, the abuser is never made accountable. All they see is the abuser eventually becomes the victim. Number 3, they don't have the cognition to understand that should they speak, the abuser will have to stop hurting children. So my plea, please, to parents everywhere, stop making it so hard for children to tell. Believe the child the first time. It takes the courage of a lion to do so.
I'm glad you said that, because I was discussing something with somebody a couple of weeks ago. You know, a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old can't create these things if they're starting to tell mommy, something. Everything warrants investigation is the way I think we have to look at this, right? Would you agree with that?
Well,
Everything.
why doubt your child about that if you half an hour earlier you believed them when they said my tummy's sore?
Oh, good analogy. Actually, a good analogy. Well, I think we know it's dark and ugly, and people don't want to confront it. But Gloria, I can't think of anything worse than hurting a child. Like, to me, I would
Oh,
be, I'm a warrior. I'm going to go in for that and take care of business. You know what I mean?
I
If
know you
somebody,
are, Lynn.
if somebody reported that, I know you'd be right alongside me with that one. So enablers. Now, this is another one. Enablers.
Oh, I think you and I have discussed this in the past, but
Yes.
for your amazing audience, those who are aware of the abuse but do nothing to stop it, either because they're fearful or self-preservation, they like the money they earn for the job they do. So, for instance, we know there are people who go to Thailand and stay in places where small children are procured for them. Now, the enablers I consider to be the people around them that have booked the travel, booked the accommodation, requested the type of child this perpetrator wants. Those are the enablers. They know the truth. They even party to it, but they do nothing. So you are complicit. Any enablers watching, you are complicit, and they are by far the bigger group. We know that pedophiles, there's 3 different types of pedophiles actually, or child sex abusers, but the enablers, I would double or treble that number.
It's funny we're talking about enablers. I actually think that is the bigger group, this
Yes,
complicit circle,
yes.
enabling, to use that word again, and allowing this. And I guess, Gloria, because they can make money from it. Why else are these people doing these evil things? Again, I go back. I'm getting so serious lately about who would hurt little children or any child, a teen. How can anybody put their head on their pillow at night? How can anybody, for a couple of dollars? That to me is pure evil.
Well, I think the thing is you got to get into the mindset of the psychopath, and we've been groomed as a society to think that young is beautiful, but unfortunately, we're in a very instantaneous world at the moment. So you'll look at something, if I don't grab your attention, you've already scrolled on. For sexualization and sexual appetites of both men and women, because we know both groups abuse. An image they saw maybe of a 17-year-old girl. But of course, the next week they might be lured into looking at a younger girl and think, oh, she looks even better or younger or whatever. And I think it's conditioning over time. But I am also here to say child sexual abuse began when time began. This is not new. It's just these smarter ways of doing it now and getting away with it.
I do think, would you agree with this? I think it has become, it's always been there, as you said. You are expert on this subject matter, but it's become more normalized.
Yes.
It's more in our faces. People are becoming more, it's part of life or something. What is the word I'm looking, like anesthetize, like they don't even understand it. We're seeing it in the music. We're seeing it in the entertainment. We see it in society. We see it definitely. I call it the swipe society, Gloria. People,
Yeah.
attention span of a gnat, they just keep next, next, next. And now
But
we're
we've
down
been
to these very
conditioned.
young children. But where can we go from here? There's
Well,
really such a normalization I'm seeing of this.
Well, we need to step back and take charge of the narrative. So, for instance, the Spice Girls. Everyone loved the Spice Girls, but the sexualization of one of them was the school Spice, the young girl dressed as a schoolgirl. all of this is grooming, and all of this has just developed more and more over time. And when you think about it, or you might be too young, Lynn, but back in the day, in the 70s and early 80s, you would see a movie and there might be some passionate kissing. That would be it.
Mm.
Nowadays, we're full on. So you see, over time, it's become more and more sexualized and more gratification required. Keep in mind, too, that for a lot of these high pornographic rings, highly placed pornographic rings in our military, in our government, in our media, the industry you're in is rife with it. They can be manipulated and bribed as well. So there's a lot that goes on. They don't trust each other either.
Of course, that's another program, but we should dig into that someday, as they say in the media. I am old enough because I turned 63 a few weeks ago. So I am old enough to remember the 70s and the 80s very fondly. But, I was young, but we didn't have, we had a lot of great movies I remember going to. Although I do remember, Gloria, I used to think soap operas here in the United States were kind of racy. As a kid, because I would watch, as a teenager in the summertime, I thought, oh, but nothing compared to what we're seeing now at all. Now, the next one is extra familial abuse. Now, what is that exactly?
Well, it's extra familial outside of the family abuse, outside of the immediate family. So not mum, not dad, not older siblings. So
is that anybody? Is that like anybody?
Anyone outside of the family. It could be an uncle, it could be a grandmother, it could be a friend, it could be the next door neighbor. It's extra familial, means outside of the family.
I'm going to jump right around. I'm not going in order here. Intrafamilial abuse, because this is one that is quite common, that is growing, that here in New York State, where I live, it is reported that 62% of the cases of sex trafficking of children are familial. It's probably higher. That's what's reported, 62%. Explain what that is, because that to me is so completely shocking. And what are we doing about it? How are we stopping generations of this? People will say to me, well, my grandmother grew up in this. My mother grew up in this. Now it's my turn. And just, I don't know. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so look, intrafamilial, so inside the family. So this is in addition to incest by a mother or a father. This is sexual abuse committed by family members living in the household. So if you've got an uncle or an auntie or a cousin, a female cousin living there, it could be a step parent, could be a sibling, or other close relatives. So you'll notice I try to keep things really clear and really simple. Because I want anyone to be able to pick up the book and think, yeah, I've got it.
Well, they are going to pick up this book, and, keeping kids safe. It's the best. It's so easy to read. And that's why we have to start with just definitions, get people used to. It's okay to talk about these words. This is what's happening. So let's talk about it. Let's understand what it is. Now, gatekeepers.
Yes. Now you're going to love them. They are the ones who both protect the abuser and provide access to. So in simple terms, think of a doctor. You want to make an appointment with your doctor. The gatekeeper is the nurse who answers the phone. So if you think about a pedophile or an abuser, they have someone who's in front of them. You don't get direct access to them. You go through the gatekeeper. They're pretty dangerous as well. They're more culpable in some ways than the enablers. Yeah. They know what's going on and they get well paid. But equally, to be fair, there will be gatekeepers and enablers watching. And just so you guys know, or you people know, I know that sometimes you will be living in fear because this psychopath has power, and they show you clearly how they're happy to hurt our most vulnerable. So you're not vulnerable, but man, you could be. So there's often a fear-based response. Yeah. And when gatekeepers are asked, why did you not speak? They will say, I was terrified.
That is a very important point, Gloria, because when I talk to people, they don't understand the psychological.
No.
What somebody's going through the mind. If I hear one more time, why didn't they run away? They are psychologically beaten down. This is all they know, and they're in survival mode. They're just breathing. They don't, and that's what we have to do a better job also on explaining to the public. People
Yes.
have to understand they are so beaten down, they can't do anything. They're immobilized. So we have to, nobody's kicking and running away anywhere when they have nowhere to run, no money, and they're in fear for themselves or other family members, perhaps. So that's an important point. Now, let's talk about the global hand signal.
Well, the person you're interviewing released that in June last year, and that was simply for our under 16s to provide them a way to communicate without using words. Because, Lynn, if we do one thing today, please can we get across to the amazing adults, safe adults watching, that children don't speak, they show us. So the global hand signal is that. 3, do it with me, Lynn. So easy. And we know children across the world are using this, and they're being seen and they're being rescued. Now, when I say that, you might be a parent that's watching this child walk past you doing this. You might think, I don't want to get involved. But hey, I'm not saying you have to go so far out of your comfort zone that you're fearful. All I'm saying is take a photo, maybe follow the child with whoever the adult is, watch them get in the car, photo of the number plate, ring the police. Like, you can take steps. When are adults going to stand up and protect the children? That's
the bottom line. That is the goal, Gloria. And you know what? I'm going to say people need to step up. And as you pointed out, if it's a car and you see somebody's arm out the window, you need to take a picture of that license. You need to, everybody has pretty much cell phones these days. You need to call 911. Nobody's getting in trouble. You're reporting. Okay. We're at a point, Gloria, people have to start stepping up. They have to get involved. And that is something I was talking about with somebody today. We now have to look out, and I don't know how this is going to work in the world today. We have to now look out for all the children.
Yes.
Because
if not you, then who? Sorry, it's that simple. If not you, then who?
Who? Because we talk about safety, we talk about educating parents, grandparents, family members, but there's that large percentage of kids who have nobody caring about them. Nobody knows what they're doing. They have to run away if they're abused at home, perhaps. So we have to figure out a way. This is my new calling. How are we going to get everybody to step up to look out for other kids also? I don't know, except to start talking about it. Look out. Just notice things. Look out for other kids. It's a big ask of society. We have to. I work with too many children who have nobody. So I can preach everything I want.
That was my story. So that's why I do what I do. I think
you're a warrior.
Well, yeah. And look, I wouldn't have chosen this life, but it's chosen me. So I think, how do we do this, Lynn? We do what you're doing. We try to get the word out. We get people like me in front of media. We get panel discussions going with decision makers. I was teaching this hand signal to a group of 80-year-old people. It was so lovely. They were all standing up doing the hand signal because they're all grandparents.
80-year-olds?
Yes.
Oh.
So this is our Rotary Club. There's a few of them in New Zealand, and I went to the founding group and did that, and they were blown away. And of course, there's survivors in the room. But the point is, we all have a responsibility, and I'm trying to inform people so they don't feel so scared of this, because it is a frightening reality. That's the bottom line.
Well, you're doing a good job with your third book, Keeping Kids Safe. Now let's get into grief cycle.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that. A lot of parents and children and people close to the child will go into grief once they realise, and the grief cycle, and we know there's 7 stages to it, so I won't go into that. All of the heavy detail is in the very back of the book in the glossary, but these are just initial introduction to it. But it's there are 7 stages, but I only include 5. So denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it's basically what happens when you hear that your beautiful child or teenager has been abused. So you're going to go into grief because, also you can imagine what would arise in you. Where was I? How could I not protect my child? The anger at whoever did this, the grief at that child having to carry it for however many years before they could share it. The sense of depression and horror you would feel, and moving into acceptance. One thing I would say though, we're all different. You might sit in anger for 3 months and then move to sadness. I might sit there for 1 day and then go to acceptance. And we just move around the cycle depending on who we are and how we cope with trauma or what our past experience has been.
And I would hope, Gloria, also people can eventually like come together to take action as opposed to just burying it or being, just stuck with this, not wanting to address it. I'm trying hard to
Yeah.
get people to take action. Now we have to get into grooming. We've got
Oh,
not only do we have just grooming, we now have to deal also with the internet. So fill us in about grooming, the definition, and thoughts on online grooming, which is happening as we are sitting here talking. Children are being abused, and I'm sick from it every day, Gloria.
yeah. So look, in my humble opinion, there's 4 key groups that are groomed. One is the child, the second are the parents, the third is the community, and the fourth is society in general. In my opinion, the biggest group by far are the parents. I know that may surprise you, but they are the ones who usually hold the key to access to their child, if you think about it that way.
I didn't think about it that way, Gloria, until last time we spoke. You brought that up, and it
Mm,
got me to thinking, well, if I'm reporting in New York State, the last study, 62% familial trafficking, it opened my eyes to, yes, they're providing the child. How are we going to get at that? Where is the, end this demand? I don't know. I don't like
The
to say I
one,
don't know, but I don't know.
I hate to tell you, the demand won't stop, but what we do have is by far more people who don't abuse or who don't enable, that if they had some education around this,
Right.
would not be quite so frightened by it and may be able to take some action. So you might wonder how a parent is groomed. It's simple. The perpetrator may have already targeted their child, approached the parents and said, hey, my son plays in your kid's team. Do you want to come over for a barbecue after the game? And starts to groom the parent. And then over time gradually tries to get the child away from the parents. So that's one example of grooming. Grooming as a society is what you and I talked about last time, but it might be that instead of calling a pedophile, we call them a minor attracted person. Really? Why? Who does that serve? Oh, it serves the pedophiles. So we're being groomed all the time. The whole thing around the over sexualization of children in schools, the pressure on them to kind of hear more and more about gender identity is just too much for kids. The cognition is not available to a child under the age of 12, and it's just wrong, frankly. A friend who's a teacher said she saw a child, he would have been 8, standing outside a boys' toilet and a girls' toilet. She said, are you okay? He said, I don't know which one to go into. It's just...
That's a separate program. I was just reading right before we got together here. In a school, a girls' high school basketball team here, I'm digressing a little bit, they forfeited their game because a 6-foot tall trans person on the team was physically, and they have the video, I saw it quickly, but I have to do a little more research, was throwing the opposing team members, like slamming them on the floor, throwing them across the basketball court. These are high school girls, and the coach, so they lost the game, had to forfeit. But nobody stopped this 6 foot tall. I'm sorry, it's a boy to me. That's the way I look at it, from doing this. So these girls lost their game because of this other, I don't even know. This person is 6 feet tall. You can see slamming them all over the floor. After 3 were hurt and 3 more got hurt, they called the game off. But it's no repercussion for. So that's a whole other thing. They're putting here in the United States, they're putting tampon in the boys' bathrooms, yet they're not putting them in the girls' bathrooms in a lot of schools, Gloria, because they said they don't have the resources. Now you tell me, how crazy is this? Okay.
Yeah.
We could go on and on about that one. We'll leave that for another segment. Tell us about these pedophiles, because I was doing an interview, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, and the host kept saying to me, the maps, the maps, the maps. We've got the maps. And I'm like,
that's what I'm saying, MAP. No.
So I said, I knew what he was referring to because it was in the headlines a lot here, but I played a little dumb, I do admit. I'm like, maps? I'm like, so what are those maps? Tell me about the maps. You know, the minor attracted persons. I'm like, no, the pedophiles. So what can you tell us about the pedophile rings? There's a lot of discussion around this. Let me ask you something, Gloria. I'm not a lawyer. If somebody just thinks about it and never acts upon it, can we really call them a pedophile? Because I know people that probably think about murder or cannibalism, but we can't arrest them for those thoughts.
No. So let me help. There are 3 types of predators. There's a pedophile, there's a preferential child sex abuser, and there's a situational child sex abuser. So pedophiles are described as having a sexual preference for children. They may or may not act on this. If they act on this, they're then also known as a preferential child sex abuser who is not interested in having sex with adults at all, only children. So they're really dangerous, these preferential child sex abusers. Some pedophiles may not act on a child, but they may access CSAMs. You with me? So that is, as we know, a form of child sexual abuse. So preferential child sex abuser, they're also known as pedophiles, but they have a clear and consistent sexual contact and preference for sexual contact with children, not adults. They're generally male, and they're known to be on the lookout for children to groom and then abuse. Now, the situational child sex abuser, the 3rd type of predator, doesn't have a true sexual preference for an adult. But let's say a couple split up, dad has a kid, he's furious with his ex, he might abuse a child. So he knows what he's doing is wrong, but he's equally happy to have sex with adults. So those are the 3 types of predators when you think about pedophilia and how it exists. Those are 3 types. Pedophiles may or may not sexually abuse a child in a physical sense. Preferential child sex abusers are the group that will look for, target, groom, and then procure children to sexually abuse. They're never interested in sex with adults. Think of the Scoutmaster debacle. I interviewed one of the key players in that recently. And then the situational child sex abuser could be a disgruntled parent who's who's furious about something. I hope that's clear, but that's,
Gloria, what about these pedophile rings? You know, we hear there are rings. Not we hear, I think we know actually. You pointed out earlier, whether it's Hollywood, the government, I don't know. What can you tell us about these rings?
Oh, look,
why can't we break them up? It's been going on for, I guess, back to the beginning of time when we.
Well, I just interviewed recently on the show, and you would have heard of her, Kathy O'Brien, who was trafficked.
I've interviewed her twice, yes.
Yeah. So, she's trafficked to the highest office in the land. I've also working with a survivor at the moment who was also trafficked to another president, but I don't have permission to disclose her name. Unfortunately, none of it surprises me. These operate at our highest levels in government and media, military, across the world. There's a little misnomer that this only happens in lower socioeconomic groups and areas and across a certain type of race or creed. No, it's everywhere. How do you think people get away with it for so long and it continues to grow? Because there's power in it at the very top. So one example I would give is I was meant to go on nationwide TV and have a documentary made about my life, which, as you know, I've turned it around to help protect and prevent. Yes, until it got to the top. No, they don't want this out there.
Exactly.
So I'm putting two and two together and saying, yeah, of course they're going to block it. Same with TV, breakfast TV. Yes. No.
Well, Hollywood, certainly, I can speak for Hollywood.
Yeah.
There have been and are rings. I'll leave it at that.
Yes.
And also they don't want, a film about in Hollywood. I use Hollywood in kind of quotations these days because I think Hollywood's over, frankly. The Hollywood we knew or thought of or grew up with, it's all different these days. And they don't, I know this from the highest, my sources, people I know, trust, they will not, because I've approached, let's have, but a true, not, a Jeffrey Epstein type-esque, something that's really like the nuts and bolts and can help society and we'll make a good documentary. We'll make a good series. We'll make a good film. They don't want that.
No.
They want salacious or they want, and again, getting back to these rings, I think there's a lot of blackmail involved. So they entice people to join these rings. There's a lot of blackmail, a lot of money, but we're going to keep talking about it. And I also don't like people being labeled crazy, psychotic when they tell about their experiences and they talk about these things. It's become, unfortunately, it's almost like dangerous to talk about some of these things. Like Kathy O'Brien will talk about things and, I actually fear a little bit for her. I don't know if I fear, but I know that we have to get the truth out there and we need more support, whether it's your story, whether it's Kathy's story, and there's so many others that you work with, I work with. This is happening. People need to know this is happening. We're not sitting here making anything up and it's escalating. So this is what people need to know. Now, let me ask you, satanic ritual abuse. Now this one does make me physically ill if I stop and think about it.
Yes.
So say whatever you want about that.
Yeah. So look, it's a thing. And this is exactly what you just said. People are made to feel like, or they're labeled psychotic or deluded or mentally unhinged because they will bring this forward. But we do know this happens and it still happens today. So this satanic ritual abuse is child sexual abuse, which is associated with that ritualistic, the cult-like activities. And it's perpetrated, it can involve animal sacrifice or human sacrifice, but it's real, it's a thing, and it goes on. And for those poor men and women who have emerged to survive it, it's usually a pretty hard thing for them to ever deal with because people can't accept that it goes on. So we have, we've got amazing people across the world who are trying to do their best to help survivors of this, like Annika Lucas, like Jeanette Archer, and they've both been on the show. I've interviewed them. I experienced it, very lucky to be alive, but it's horrendous. And because it's another step, if you think about it, it's another step along that pathway. The manipulation that you talk about in terms of of these men and women who are perpetrating this they're being threatened and blackmailed by it. And this is how this stuff just keeps growing. And they're also meant to be out recruiting as well. So one of the groups I was trafficked to a great deal was the Freemasons. And they still, as we know, lead the world. They're the most powerful group in the world, in any country are the Freemasons, and they're still operating today.
Kathy O'Brien spoke of that as well with the Freemasons. Well, we have to keep speaking out about this. We just,
yeah.
I mean, any way we can, listen, when media doesn't even want to talk about sex trafficking in the truest sense, or the Black community in New York is the highest percentage of those sex trafficked, but they do want to talk about nonstop Jeffrey Epstein. I have only one question with Jeffrey Epstein, because I actually just did a video recently. I said, listen, where are the question that everybody needs to be asked is, where are those videos? Where are those recordings? Where is that actual evidence? That is the question every single person should be asking right now. And I'm not hearing it anywhere. I'm not sure they like that answer, but, because they want it the more salacious, and I'm like, no, where are those videos? Who's holding them? Where are the recordings? So we're about education. That's what we're about. We're about intervening, preventing, not just all that salacious stuff. Now let's finish up with two things that are, I don't want to say hot topics. That sounds too trivial. Sextortion online. And also it kind of, Gloria, I'm combining a little bit with the sibling abuse. And I tell you why sibling sexual abuse, because we now have these predators directing children to abuse their siblings, or else they're going to perhaps show that original picture the child sent of a nude. Listen, Gloria, I see people nude walking around New York. I'm not exaggerating. Like, so you sent a nude image. Let's talk about it. Like, I don't think it's anything. Nobody likes this. I'm talking about the child. We have so many parents embarrassed about talking about a nude image. We have kids killing themselves because they sent a nude image. I'm like, let's just talk about it. It's a nude image. What do you have to say about all of this, sextortion, and also this sibling sexual abuse? That's rising.
Yeah.
It's on the rise.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. But look, I would say this. Adults have the choice to do what they wish. These predators online that are doing the sextortion, they know exactly what they're doing. And we know that when a child is a little bit younger, or going through puberty, or even as an adolescent, they're completely consumed with not feeling good enough, or uncomfortable and being compared to everybody else. So I do feel for these teenagers, because it's everything. They only know this world. But the practice of extorting sexual acts, images from a child, either through manipulation or bribery, is on the rise. Kids can be tricked into providing a semi-nude or nude. But the issue, as you say, may not be it's more that if you don't get your sister, your 4-year-old, to come in and do something, I'm going to send it to the school and to all your mates. Now, for the child who's being sextorted, they believe that, because we've got to remember that children will always believe the adult. That's how they're conditioned. So they don't want that image to be shared with their mates, or their their community, or their church, or whatever. They're then threatened if they don't provide. That will go out. But more than that, there's a twist to the story. These abusers, these sextortion experts, are now getting kids to sextort their friends.
Yes.
And you know what the trick in that is? Kids can't be charged with an offence, because they're children. You see how clever it's getting? See how manipulative it's getting?
Well, it's the same with, the sex trafficking. They get the pimps and traffickers, get the women or boys, men, underage. Well, let's talk about the minors. The minors, let me be clear, to get the other girls or boys, carry
Yeah.
the drugs, commit the crimes because they are minors. But I think
Yes.
we know about it. We got to let the world know about it. Let's finish up because we have so much more to talk about. We're going to be doing several chats with Gloria as much as she'll come back on the Warriors to go through this book, because the next time I want to talk about the roadmap guidelines and then really get into Gloria. I kind of let you lead the conversation. I know your story. So I like you to tell it. Anything you add about you, I don't want to talk for you. Part one is about child sexual abuse. So people have to really understand more about that and the roadmap before that, the guidelines for everything. This book, everybody, Keeping Kids Safe, this is the number one. Easy to read, easy to digest, easy to share with friends, family. Everybody's got to get a copy of it, gloriamasters.com. Gloria, leave us with some final thoughts.
Look, I'm always going to hold the hope, and I'm always going to hold the hope because I believe there's many more of us out in the world who wish to protect and keep our children safe than there are those that don't. And then I just would love to leave you with this. Whose job is it to protect children, she asked. Not mine, said one. Not my problem, said another. The question then becomes, if not you, then who?
Excellent final warrior words, Gloria Masters, gloriamasters.com. Thank you for joining me. We will definitely be speaking again soon. This is so informative. This is also good. I'm so proud that I'm able to call you friend and colleague, and that we will continue this collaboration to get the word out and intervene and educate and raise awareness. That is what is needed. Thank you, Gloria Masters.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show, Lynn.
Absolutely.